Now, I want you to imagine this for a second, okay? Getting 3 interviews in 1 week after only applying to 6 jobs. Not 100, not 50, not 20, 6 jobs. And that's what my client Elaine achieved. Now, this is especially important if you are trying to transition into a role where you've never had a title. And by transition, I mean trying to break into Agile altogether as a Scrum Master, or trying to up level and go from a more senior Scrum Master or even an Agile coach. Okay, so this is what we're going to talk about today. Now, I actually want to share something here with you. Okay, this is the text that I sent my boss when I basically quit. And the reason I quit is because I felt disrespected. And I was at my job for the longest time because I dreaded applying for jobs and I hated writing my resume. So this is one of my biggest drivers for teaching you all today how to talk about yourself in the form of a resume, aka your branding.
What you do works, period.
I know a lot of people don't associate resume writing with fun, but believe me, when you do it the right way, it can actually be fun. It can empower you. It can help you realize your value and all of the wonderful things we've done. And especially for Scrum Masters and Agile coaches, because we have a tendency to hide behind the team and always put the team first, and we tend to forget ourselves. And Agile coaches, Scrum Masters, probably out of all of the clients that I coach, because I coach a variety of clients, we have a tendency to struggle with talking about ourselves the most. I would love to know, when it comes to writing your resume, please be honest with me. This is a safe space. What do you feel is your biggest frustration? Because I want to make sure that I answer your questions. And if my presentation does not answer your question, I will loop back. I will try to answer it if we have time. And if not, I will DM you and provide you the answer personally. Trying to understand how much detail to provide regarding the work completed. Highlighting the skills and transferable ones to align with the experience in the job description. Excellent. Want to highlight the good stuff to be seen. Yes, that's what we want to do. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing. All right. Keep putting down the frustrations as you think about them, because I would love to go through that with you. Okay. So I want to start with why we're here, okay? Because honestly, I am so, how do I say this? Like, it is so crazy for me, and I'm trying not to get emotional, that I am on the other side because I really struggled with this. You've probably heard my story of how I quit over text, okay? And that is because and why that was very difficult for me, that time period, is because I was getting a lot of rejections and it did not make sense to me. So whether you're trying to break into Scrum Master role, an Agile coach role, or an Agile leadership role, I want to share with you today techniques that helped my clients interview at companies like Slalom, Dell, and Miniclip, because the whole point of the resume is to fill your calendar with interviews. And we don't want to just fill it with any interviews. We want to fill it with interviews that we are excited about. So what are we going to be talking about today? We're going to talk about building a resume that lands you interviews and doesn't get you ghosted by recruiters. And specifically, the tactic and the tools that I helped my clients increase their interview Conversion rate from application to interview, up to 50%. And I also wanted to show you this, and some of you may have seen this. It honestly is very important for everyone to land a job they love, because honestly, we spend a lot of our time at work, and it can create a severe impact on our mental health, on our physical health. And this is honestly why I do what I do, is because I never want anyone to be in the same shoes that I've been. I lost half of my pancreas because I was stressed out. So I just, wanted to share that with everyone. All right. So another thing I wanted to share is that if I was able to achieve what I've been able to achieve, then honestly, you can all achieve it. Here's the thing. I used to be terrible. I used to get a lot of rejections, and the only reason I grew in my career is because I was in consulting and I knew people. But once I went out of my comfort zone and I came out of consulting and I relied on my resume, I did not have any success for the longest time. And so now I'm a certified resume writer. I've contributed to a resume certification program. I've helped people in more than 7 countries. I've helped people land at all of these jobs, all of these companies, ranging from Amazon to Slalom to Red Hat to Microsoft, different types of roles. And I've also been invited to speak at the Scrum Alliance. Truthfully, I was Kung Fu Panda. I was such a disaster. So there is hope, everyone. There is hope. If I can do it, you can do it. All right. And I can totally empathize with everything that you all are going through. Okay. I want to share with you one of the biggest myths. One of the biggest myths that a lot of people have is that you need to know people at companies in order to land a job. And working on your resume and applying for jobs at companies that where people don't know you is useless. And so I want to bust this myth, and I want to tell you about my client Heath. So my client Heath landed as an Agile mentor in Portugal. So he's based in the US, so that's proof that he doesn't know anyone in the company. And he landed at a company in a different country as an Agile mentor because of his resume. Okay, so there you go. If he can do it, you can also do it. Okay, so the truth is, it's never been easier to contact hiring managers and reach them and get access to them, but it's also never been harder to get their attention, because they get a lot of DMs when it comes to jobs. Same thing with recruiters. When people say, oh my God, recruiters tend to ghost me. Well, do you know why? It's because they're so flooded with messages that they have no time to respond to you. So let me give you an illustration of what I've noticed in terms of patterns that people go through when they are going through the job search process. I actually call them the valleys of death. Okay, so the first valley of death is that I tend to see people who never get started in their job search. They don't apply for a job. They don't even try. And there are several reasons for that. A, they dread the job search process. They dread working on their resume. And B, they have imposter syndrome because they don't realize what they've done. So, some of you come out of that valley of death. You pull a resume together, you apply for a few jobs, but then what happens after a couple of weeks of doing that? What happens is you give up, okay? So some people come out of that with a lot of grit after a ton of virtual coffees and pep talks. And what happens is you start learning how to tailor your resume. You realize that you can't just use the same resume for the same job. And so you start getting a few interviews. But the problem that people face is when they start chatting with 20 different people on virtual coffees and everyone has a different opinion on what the resume needs to look like. And by sheer luck, apply to hundreds and hundreds of jobs, what happens is you burn out. And some of you are troopers and you push through the burnout and somehow, get an offer because you've probably applied to 200 jobs at that point. Okay. And because you're just so exhausted of applying to a ton of jobs that the first offer you get, you end up accepting, even if you're not completely thrilled with it. Okay. So then what happens is you become unfulfilled. You're in a job that you're not excited about because you just took whatever you could because you're just so tired of applying. Okay. So, who can identify? Let me go back to the valleys of death. Put in the chat for me which valley of death resonates with you or you've been through, maybe the one that's most frustrating for you. I am so curious to know. Which valley of death resonates? I know that the one that I spent the most time in was unfulfilled. I got so exhausted of applying for jobs that I just took whatever towards the end. And at one point, I experienced burnout applying to a whole bunch of jobs, like literally more than 40 jobs in a short period of time and getting 30 rejections. It was very, very disheartening. Yes, burnout, all of them, burnout, unfulfilled, just dead. Oh my gosh. I mean, I'm just laughing because I can totally relate to everything that you're all seeing. Okay, as I mentioned, I was doing all the wrong things. And one of the biggest mistakes that I made was convincing myself, and this is kind of embarrassing because I used to be a consultant on recruitment initiatives where we were building recruitment systems at Deloitte, and I knew how the back end worked, but somehow I fell into the trap of thinking that I had to fight these resume bots and the application tracking system is tricking me, and I need to stuff these keywords and I need to put my content in some boring Word document in order to get through. And yeah, of course, that didn't help because a real human being actually goes through your resume. And so let me just help everyone understand what an actual application tracking system does and how it works. So this is how an application tracking system works. This is how it looks like. The whole point of the application tracking system is to basically or help a recruiter organize your applications. It is not to, it's not like some AI tool that basically selects your resume or does a fuzzy search or mapping, right? It's just a way for recruiters to organize your information. And every single resume, the ones that basically get screened, they're seen by the human eye. Sure, some of them don't get screened because recruiters, depending on when you apply, they could already be interviewing people. So I just wanted to basically explain how it works. Think of it as a Trello board where the application moves to different phases. Okay, as far as automated rejections, that happens because of the way we filled out the application, and it has nothing to do with the resume. In fact, there are some screening questions around your eligibility to work, in a particular country, your salary, and that's what disqualifies you and gets you the automated rejection. Okay, here's more proof. An actual screenshot of how a recruiter shared with me that they don't use AI bots to screen resumes. Okay, so there you go. I'm not making anything up. All right, the second biggest mistake that I personally made was providing too much information. And I want to show you something here. I want to show you why we have that tendency. And it's because we feel like we have one shot at proving that we're the right fit. So we feel that we need to cram a ton of information because we have one shot. And the thing is, if you are familiar with user experience, Hicks' law, the more information you throw at a person, the longer it's going to take them to make decisions. So here's an example of a before and after of a resume. As you can see on the left, there's a whole bunch of things that this person is talking about. They're talking about their ability to drive projects. They're talking about their ability to introduce, design systems, to conduct research. I mean, sure, I've been in situations where I was a Scrum Master and I was a jack of all trades and I helped the team outside of my responsibility, but I'm not going to talk about that because I'm going to overwhelm the recruiter. The recruiter needs to focus on the things that map to the job posting. And what is the Scrum Master archetype? The Scrum Master archetype is all about working cross-functionally with teams, facilitating, Scrum Master ceremonies or roadmap sessions or driving continuous improvement. We're only going to talk about the things that the recruiter cares about that's going to influence the decision. It's like, I'm going to give you an analogy, right? If what is important to you in order to, I don't know, if you go into an ice cream shop, right? And what's important to you in terms of picking, a type of ice cream, right, is maybe the flavor and the texture, right? Are you going to care if that person is going to talk to you about the color of the ice cream, about when it was made, or all of these unnecessary things that don't align with your decision-making criteria? No. So that's what happens. That is exactly what happens when you are talking about things that the recruiter doesn't necessarily care about. You don't have to talk about every single detail that you've done on the job. So if you speak like a Scrum Master, recruiters will see you as a Scrum Master. And if you talk about project management things or design things or whatever else you were doing, then they're just not going to see you that way. And you're just going to confuse them. It's going to dilute your brand. It's just going to create lack of focus. Okay, so the other mistake that I see a lot of people do is literally copy and paste job postings. And this makes you, as a candidate who's not really believable, they're going to doubt you've done these things because you literally just copied and pasted the job posting, right? So here's an example of a job posting a resume where the person just copied and pasted. Okay. Why is this resume not very believable? The person doesn't really talk about the specifics of what they've done or the impact that they've created. Versus when you look at this resume, right? This is a snippet from an actual resume that I helped someone write. You can see that they talk about their roles and responsibilities. You can see that there are numbers that basically create some context in terms of what they've done. And you can also see proof of success, right? So this makes the resume believable and all the things that this person has done believable. So I'm going to give you the framework, the 3-step framework, in order to build a perfect, and this should not be product, but you can see that this is a transferable process to any position out there. You don't have to be a Scrum Master for this to work for you, right? So I use this approach whether my clients are going for product roles, whether my clients are going for Scrum Master roles, UX design roles, any role out there. This is your 3-step approach, okay? The first thing you want to start with is actually understand your ideal job. You cannot start writing a resume against thin air. You need to have an anchor. You need to have an ideal job that you brand yourself against. The second step is you want to map your experience to that ideal job, okay? And then the third step is obviously after you create your content and you come up with it, then you want to put it in some kind of resume template. Most people start with step 3 and then wonder why their resume is not effective. It's like when you're cooking something, you got to prep your ingredients before you cook, right? So it's the same thing. You got to flush out your content and you got to align your content to an actual job posting out there before you start plopping it into a template. Okay, now before you write what you did, okay, you need to understand what hiring managers look for. And so, how do you determine what hiring managers look for? You determine that based on a job posting. So, if you're applying for a particular job, you need to read the job posting carefully. And I know it seems simple, but most people do not read the job posting carefully. So, I'm going to teach you how to read a job posting carefully. This is an example of a Scrum Master job that I just pulled for you. And you can see there are certain aspects that are highlighted in yellow. And so I invite you to look at these different roles and responsibilities and really think about them. What you need to do is think about each bullet and try to brainstorm moments in each position where you've demonstrated these things. So let us say, for example, guiding the team and organization on how to use Agile or Scrum practices. So you need to brainstorm a moment where you've actually worked with a team and you've incorporated Agile or Scrum Master practices in order to drive value. We tend to overcomplicate things as human beings, but this is a simple thing that we can all do, right? Before we write our resume. Okay, so who is familiar with the Agile competency framework? I'm so curious about that. Anyone heard of it? Anyone heard of the Agile competency framework? So the Agile competency framework is a great tool for you to understand the different components when it comes to the roles and responsibilities of an Agile coach or a Scrum Master. The foundation for every effective Agile practitioner is you need to have a toolbox of the different frameworks, whether it's Scrum, whether it is Kanban, and now people are going to shoot me when I say SAFe, and it doesn't matter because even if you don't like SAFe, you should learn about it so you know what's out there so that you can educate your team and let them know if you feel that this is not the right framework for them. You need to understand, you need to also demonstrate professional coaching. You need to demonstrate facilitation skills, as in facilitating certain sessions, whether it is retrospectives, backlog refinements, all of that good stuff, right? So that needs to be incorporated in your resume as you talk about what you've done. You need to cover all of those different pieces. Teaching and mentoring, that is the training component. So teaching your team certain things like, for example, user story writing. Maybe you facilitated a workshop that teaches them that. And then you need to demonstrate an area of mastery. So if you are applying for transformation roles, like an agile transformation coaching role, then you need to show that you're able to act as a change agent. If you are going for Scrum Master roles that are more, or maybe you are the type of, Scrum Master who came from a business analysis background and you have business mastery. So talk about that. And you can look at the job posting and ask yourself, what type of Scrum Master are they looking for? Are they looking for someone who can help with a transformation, or are they looking for someone who's strong on the business side, who's going to spend more time with the product owner? Or are they looking for someone who maybe is involved in DevOps and technical mastery? So understanding these things are going to help you communicate your value better and talk about what you've done in your resume. Now, don't fall into the trap of talking about things, for example, like technical mastery, if the actual job posting is looking for a transformation, agile coach, right? So you got to pay attention to these things. Okay, I'm going to give you all a trick, and that is every single job out there is composed of these 4 themes. Whether it is Scrum Master, Agile Coach, Product Manager, whatever it is in tech, this is like the DNA of every job posting. And why am I showing you this? Because as human beings, we tend to do well when we categorize information. And when you categorize a job posting into these themes, it's going to help you think of them as buckets, and it's going to help you brainstorm things that you've done that fit into these buckets and not miss any of these buckets. Okay, so I'm going to talk about leadership. Whether you're a Scrum Master, or a more senior Scrum Master with a larger scope, you're responsible for coaching multiple teams, or you're working at the enterprise level, you need to demonstrate leadership qualities. So from a roles and responsibility perspective, what falls under leadership is your ability to coach teams in order to improve their ways of working. Every single Scrum Master job posting is going to talk about that. So guess what? You're going to have to talk about a moment where you did that, where you've coached a team in order to improve their ways of working. Now, if you are going for more senior roles, you need to demonstrate that you were able to do that at a larger scale. So it's important to talk about the number of teams you coached. It's important to talk about your interaction with more senior people. And then when it comes to the other theme is strategy and design. So strategy is all of the thinking stuff that you do, all the thinking activities that you do on the job. And design is all of the building related activities that you help your team accomplish based on that strategy. So here are 2 examples of tasks that roll up to strategy and design. When it comes to strategy, when it comes to helping our teams plan, we come up with strategies as agile coaches and scrum masters where we improve the performance of our teams. And so we decide, for example, to come up with a coaching blueprint. If you are an enterprise agile coach, you will decide with your other scrum masters or leadership team what type of agile methodology you're going to use, whether it's safe or some other Scrum at Scale or some other agile framework. And when it comes to design, you are involved in the execution. You may not be the executor, but you need to think of yourself as the person who is guiding the execution. So it is important to talk about all of the roles and responsibilities and the tasks that you do to not just, help the team plan, but to also help the team to implement. So if you think about it, some of the design aspects of building products is, let's say, coming up with user stories. So talk about that. Talk about how you guided the team with that. Cool. So something that a lot of Scrum Masters, especially Scrum Masters who are more junior, forget to talk about in their resume is their ability to help the team make decisions based on data and hard facts. So you're going to be looking at actual metrics and KPIs that indicate whether the team is performing, whether we are hitting it on the nail in terms of, creating value. So it's very important to talk about that as well. So examples of KPIs that indicate whether the team is on the right track are things like the number of defects. If you help the team decrease the number of defects, then you have been successful, right? So that's just one example. So don't forget to talk about the data aspect of what you do as well. Last but not least, when it comes to being a Scrum Master, you are expected to know certain tools at organizations. So look out for those tools. Tools like Jira, Confluence, Basecamp, whatever that organization uses, make sure that you show familiarity. And if you don't know that exact tool, then I recommend you go on YouTube, you research it, right? Because at the end of the day, if you know one tool, then you should be able to use multiple tools. All right, so we talked about understanding your ideal job, and we talked about a little bit about brainstorming, components of that job and categorizing it. Now I want to talk about how you can map your experience to the ideal job. So this is the most important part that people struggle with. So definitely pay attention to this. All right. So this is the winning anatomy of a position on a resume. Okay. A lot of people, when they write their resume, they're going to have a whole bunch of bullets. And as someone who worked with recruiters and still works with recruiters, that is the biggest recruiter's pet peeve, is when you have a bunch of bullets, because it means that everything is important. Now, the way recruiters scan resumes is they're just going to quickly make sure that you were doing the things that they are looking for. And this is why this is in paragraph form at the top. So this is your roles and responsibility. And then the bullets are actually the impact that you've created or the proof of success, because those are the wins that you created. They need to stand out, and that's why they are in bullet format. All right, so let me know in the chat if this is something that you've never seen before, or this is the first time that you've heard of this, because I'm curious. Not a lot of people, I've reviewed so many resumes, and not a lot of people actually put it in this format. This is the winning format. So put in the chat if this is the first time that you've seen this. I'm so curious. Wonderful. So now I'm going to talk about how to map your experience to the different themes that we talked about. So the strategy and design, the leadership, the technology, analytical. So here's an example. So something I actually recommend. So you may be a Post-it note person, maybe you are a digital person. There are a lot, you can use Miro board for this in order to organize your thoughts, right? Because I recommend that you always, just like a great writer, writers don't go and just write a book. They create an outline. They brainstorm ideas, right? So before you write your resume, please, please, please organize your thoughts. And as you organize your thoughts, have the job posting next to you, look at the different bullets, categorize those bullets into themes, and then ask yourself, is there a project that I worked on that was meaningful to me? And when I was on that project, what are some of the things that I did that align with those different themes? So here's an example. I used GameX because I want to protect my client's confidentiality. This is an actual example, and this person actually landed a job through his resume, right? And I'm sharing this with you. So from a strategy and design perspective, He facilitated roadmap planning for new mobile game to achieve product goals through backlog refinement, sprint planning, and daily Scrum. The job posting, right, asked for experience facilitating ceremonies. And so he talked about the fact that when he was helping his team build this game, he facilitated the roadmap planning for this new mobile game. Now, notice how those specifics, tying it into what product the team was working on, what are the exact, meetings that he facilitated, makes it believable because he adds some context that is relevant to him rather than just simply copying and pasting a whole bunch of keywords from a job posting. And then in that same project, the leadership role and responsibility was that he led a cross-functional team. And if you've looked at, job postings related to resumes, cross-functionality is an important aspect. Your ability as an agilist to work with different people in a team, right? Now, what makes it cool is he talks about how it was across 4 departments. So notice how we put down the number. Very important, creates context, and it also shows that this person is more senior because he was able to interact with multiple departments and not just one. And the whole goal is to help the teams move towards higher Scrum maturity. Okay, so I'm seeing a question, and Marianne, totally cool that you've been told not to use this format. Hey, everyone has an opinion. I'm just sharing with you what has worked for my 100+ clients. So I always tell people, come in with a beginner's mindset. Maybe you will get a tidbit here and there, and then you get to choose what resonates with you and what doesn't. Okay, so question, yes, Dami, completely agree. You should not use a lot of bullets because it becomes overwhelming for a recruiter. So are we taking the 4 themes and using those points to build a tailored resume for the specific job description? Absolutely. And what you're going to notice, Jennifer, is that you will notice patterns amongst all the Scrum Master roles. So if you align your resume to the most common patterns and the themes that reoccur, you're not going to need 10, 20 different types of resumes. Okay? So when you're thorough the way I am, and you are covering all of your bases and you're looking at all the themes, then it's going to save you time in the long run. Then all you're going to do is you're going to adjust the 10% that's different in that particular role that you're applying to. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, so analytical in this case is my client coach product management team and dev team to define the game metrics. Wonderful. So once you map your experiences to the themes, I recommend you start with brainstorming projects you were on. Think of moments on those projects. Ask yourself what you were doing in these different moments and break them down into themes. Now you can write down the paragraph. Okay, so you will notice that this paragraph is pretty much an exact replica of what this person brainstormed in the themes. Now it's just a matter of putting it all together. So led cross-functional teams of developers, UX designers, and technical artists across 4 departments, 6 time zones, 5 countries, towards higher Scrum maturity, facilitated roadmap planning for new mobile game, and guided teams to achieve product goals, drove continuous improvement, etc. Right? So all of this comes from the outline that they created. Okay, so now that we talked about the paragraph, which describes the things that you've done and doesn't necessarily basically what do you call it? The paragraph doesn't necessarily talk about the impact, but just the things you've done. Now you want to talk. Now we need to talk about the proof of success. So the proof of success is the so what. What is the benefit that you created for the organization? So yeah, you coach the teams in Agile framework, but how did that benefit the company? Okay, because at the end of the day, companies want people who create value for them, who impact their bottom line. They don't just hire people who just make changes for nothing, right? So here's how I want you to think about the proof of success or your achievements, which a lot of people struggle with. And this is where I use storytelling to help my clients. Before we get into the resume, we actually write down all of the different stories of moments that they've gone through. Now, since a lot of you are Scrum Masters and Agile coaches, okay, I want you to think of them as transformation stories because you are a change agent. Every single little thing that you do on the job is creating change. You're doing things, you're helping teams do things differently. And that's what creates the improvement. So I want you to think of the different projects you worked on and then ask yourself, what are some of the changes that I brought forward or integrated into the team? What is a change you led or contributed to? Now, here's an example. So maybe you came in on a team and you coach them on using these Agile frameworks. Now, I want you to ask yourself a question. How did that help the team? How did that improve the company's bottom line? Is there a way I can tie that into some kind of performance, some kind of KPI measure, some kind of impact that have affected the company's bottom line? So it could be that because you introduce those Agile frameworks or you coach a team on how to use them, you were able to help the team expedite their delivery by 50%. Maybe you help them launch the product faster. So quantify that, and it doesn't have to be an exact measure. It can be a ballpark. All right, so we talked about building your transformation stories and the proof of success. And here is what the end result looks like. You got the things that you did, which the recruiter can quickly scan, and the achievement. Now I'm going to go back to the whole skepticism of, does this work? But I've been told I should do this differently. I invite you to check the source of where this is coming from, right? Did you get an interview when you did it this way? Right? Because sometimes what happens is my clients come to me and say, oh, the recruiter advised me to make all these changes. And the first question I ask them is, did you get the interview? And they go like, yes, I did. So I'm like, the resume did its job. And that person is going to have an opinion, and that is okay. Good for them. But the resume did its job. Wonderful. Okay. So the last part is about fitting your experience in a resume template. So this is the winning resume layout that I share with a lot of my clients. And you can see that your name and title needs to be at the top so that obviously it stands out. The title that you should have, whether you've been a Scrum Master officially or not, is I recommend you put in the title that matches the job posting. You're not really saying that you did this job. You're just saying, I am applying for this role that is referenced in the job posting. I also recommend that you have a why me section, and then you list out your work experience. You put your contact information on both pages. And the biggest mistake that I see people make is they put their education on the very top instead of the second page. As an experienced professional, recruiters are going to care more about what you've done rather than what your education is, because you're no longer a new grad. Okay, so I just wanted to point that out. Now, a lot of people are going to be skeptical again and say, oh my God, 2 pages. I've been told I should only have 1 page. It is so difficult to give the level of context that I just showed you in a 1-pager. It turns your resume into an ugly, crammed resume with not a lot of white space. So again, this has been tested and tried on more than 100 people. And as someone who's part of the International Association of Career Coaches, collectively, as part of the association, we've helped thousands of people land jobs, and this is the format that has worked. Okay. So this is just walking you through the different components. So you want your name, you want the title of the role. So that just gives you an idea. You want your contact information. You want to put in the list of tools that are listed in the job posting because they're going to skim through that. So if Jira is on there and you don't put in Jira, then you're not going to get contacted. So make sure that you're familiar with the tools that is in the job posting. Also, make sure that you list your education and certifications. And this is a before and after of a resume. You can see how beautiful the resume looks, because at the end of the day, you want to create a beautiful user experience for the person who's skimming through your resume. You don't want them to look at it and get a headache. You want them to easily navigate it and find the information they are looking for. Okay, so we have 15 minutes left, and I want to give you additional tips, more value, especially around the question of how do you quantify the impact of what you've done? Okay. A little tidbit I like giving people is what I call the triangle. So when I talk about how you need to show basically the change that you've made, what is the change that you introduced, and then what was the impact you created for the organization, you can think of it in terms of this triangle. You want to ask yourself, did that translate into cost savings? Did that translate into more revenue, more profitability for the organization? Did it result in time savings? Did it increase the quality? As long as you think from those terms, then it's going to help you reverse engineer what the impact was, right? So from a quality perspective, think number of defects. That's a great way to quantify that you've increased the quality. You can say by how much you've helped the team, your developers, decrease defects, which translates into better products, right? Because it's all about creating value, not just, pushing a bunch of frameworks on the team. And in terms of cost, if the team was able to deliver sooner, then obviously that translates into cost savings, right? So you can quantify that. Maybe it was taking them 2 sprints or 3 sprints, but then you introduced some better ways of working, and that helped the team deliver faster. And revenue, you can also pull those numbers, or even if you've been on products where you were guiding teams to deliver products that impact a ton of consumers, you could also say things like, uh, my work impacted, let's say, 30,000, customers. All right. And this is an example that I love sharing with people, that if my client who's outside of tech and in the world of academia was able to quantify her achievements, then you definitely can. All right. So I hope that has been helpful. I really, really want you to share with me any questions that you may have that I wasn't able to answer, because I want to make sure that people leave feeling good. The other thing that I wanted to say is that if there is enough demand and people actually are interested in this, I can launch a resume writing workshop. And if you are familiar with my style of basically running workshops, I try to keep them at a lower cost since they are group based. And my goal is to always empower people to do things themselves. It's the Agile coach in me. I'm all about empowering people to learn how to fish rather than just feeding them. I want you to learn how to write your own resume, because guess what? No one understands what you've done more than you. Obviously, as a coach, I facilitate the process of helping people figure out what's important and what needs to be included. It's useful to talk through your experiences with someone who, from the outside, helps you simplify it. But it is very important for you to know how your resume gets put together, rather than just throwing it over a fence to someone or some resume writing shop, and they misinterpret. They totally misinterpret, right? what you've done. So if you are interested in a resume writing workshop where I walk you through all of these things in detail, share with you a resume template, put you in a space where you can bounce your experiences by me and collaborate with people in a fun way, put down in the chat for me, I'm interested. I have a question around listing skills on a resume for experienced hires, example, Agile coaches. Absolutely necessary. I recommend that you always look at the minimum requirements of a job posting. There's always a section that talks about the minimum qualifications or the minimum requirements. Scan through that list and make sure whatever they mention is included. Okay? John, you're interested. Evelyn, you're interested. Interested. Wonderful. This gets me so excited. You know, I facilitated a storytelling workshop and I got this amazing feedback that made me want to bawl like a baby. The person said to me that she was very emotional, that she had interviewed with Google. She went through all till the um, very last round, didn't get the job, and she said, "I really wish I knew your system of how to put stories together, because if I did, I would have gotten the job." And that made me want to cry like a baby, because she shared with me that for the first time, she feels so good about her interview answer. And so I facilitate these workshops because I really, really want to help people. I'm so sick and tired of people getting scammed, of people getting all this misinformation. Unfortunately, the career coaching industry is not very regulated. And there are, unfortunately, career coaches who get paid by these apps like JobScan, okay, because they sell this idea of rating your resume as ATS friendly based on the number of keywords you put in. And you know what? My mentor, who's also on the Forbes Coaches Council, we tested this and we took a resume before and after with keywords, without keywords, and it provided the same score. And that was just disheartening. It makes me nauseated, it makes me angry. I was part of the scam. I spent thousands of dollars on misinformation. And you know what? I'm putting myself out of business by sharing with you all these secrets, because guess how many people reach out to me telling me to write their resume? And I refuse to do these reviews. I refuse to just keep writing resumes for people and causing them to be overly dependent on me. I want to empower people with knowledge, and I'd actually rather spend my time talking about other things that would accelerate people's success. If I can help people write their own resume and we spend most of our sessions working on more important things like, you know, how to ensure your first 90 days go smoothly, then I would rather do that. So, I'm thinking of launching a resume writing workshop and offering it at a very, very low cost, lower than you paying a resume writer, and having that knowledge forever. So let me know if you're interested. Also, if you are interested in getting my storytelling flashcards that are going to inspire you to come up with stories that go into your resume, then definitely, definitely, definitely send me a DM and I will make sure that you get the link so that you can download them. Okay, friends. Any last minute questions? Because I would love to answer more questions for you and make sure you're coming out of this with a lot of value. So if there is a question that I haven't answered, and I apologize if I missed it, it's quite difficult to facilitate this and to also monitor the chat. So please, please excuse me if I haven't, answered your question. Do you have a template like you showed that you could share? I can absolutely share that if you attend my resume workshop. The reason I don't share my resume up front, and you can ask all of my clients who are part of the career transformation program, is because I know when the moment I give people the template, they're just going to start filling it out. And it's not the template. It is not the template that is going to help you become successful. 80% of people's pitfall is they write about the wrong stories. They don't have flushed out stories and good content. It doesn't matter how fancy the template is. It's all about having the right content. Is it a myth then that shading and columns and fancy looking resumes, the ATS chokes on them? Excellent question, Jenna. I'm so glad that you asked that. Let me explain a little bit about the application tracking system. So, there are some application tracking systems that are on the old dinosaur side of things, and they're not able to parse components of your resume and put them in the right fields on your application. Okay. Now, I've talked to a lot of, recruiters, and I asked them, do you read people's experiences in the fields of the database in the application tracking system, or do you actually look at the PDF? And they said, I look at the PDF. So does that matter that the application tracking system didn't parse your resume correctly? Absolutely not. In fact, it is very fixable. When you're applying for a job, you usually will have the option to upload a resume PDF or a Word document. And then what you end up seeing is the sections of that file put into fields, and you have the opportunity to review if the content was extracted correctly. So guess what you can do? You can fix it yourself if it didn't parse it correctly. And 99% of the time, because there is no perfect tool out there, it is going to be parsed incorrectly no matter what format you provide. So would you rather put in the extra 10% effort to copy and paste in the right fields and create a great experience for the recruiter who's going to scan through your resume? Or would you rather, not spend time doing that and create a miserable experience for your recruiter who's going to scan through your resume? I'll let you decide on that. Okay. You didn't bait us. I tried to give you all as much value as possible in a 1-hour session without confusing you all and overloading you with information. Okay, that is always my mission. Really, truthfully, that is my mission because I've been burnt. As an entry-level Scrum Master, how do I formulate a resume with no experience? Obviously, I call it the common thread. Okay, you need to have a common thread and transferable skills. So one of the biggest things, and I'm not going to lie to you and say that you can get a Scrum Master job with zero experience, there has to be some things that they ask for, whether even if you've done it unofficially or not, that you have done. So in order to break into Scrum Master and Agile Coach, which is a different topic, and Miriam, please DM me because I can send you an actual complete webinar where I dig through that. So don't forget to do that. But in my short explanation here that will benefit everyone is, you need to have experience working on a team. You can't just say that you want to apply for a Scrum Master role if you haven't been part of a team. Now, it doesn't mean that you need to officially have been a Scrum Master to break in, but you need to have exposure, and there needs to be moments where you've actually interacted with a team. Okay? Sometimes what happens is people unofficially play the role of a Scrum Master. They end up facilitating sessions, they raise their hand, they take on these additional, responsibilities. One of my clients, Brandon, who actually broke into his first Scrum Master role with me, he was in a customer success role. He actually shadowed another Scrum Master for a whole year. So he had that exposure. So while he did not have the official title, he had that exposure, and that is extremely, extremely, extremely important. Okay. Look at the themes and ask yourself, have I done these things within the themes? Have I worked cross-functionally with people? Doesn't matter if I had the title or not. Have I facilitated sessions? Have I, trained people on agile concepts or educated them? Even if you're a developer and you educated your fellow developers, right, on agile concepts, then you can talk through that. Forget about the title. Look at the meat of the job posting. Okay. But if you haven't done the meat, then you're stretching the truth, right? So I recommend that you get that exposure, even if it's unofficial. Not gonna lie to you to sell you resume services and paint for you a rosy dream just for you to feel disheartened. That is the reality. And I'm being real and blunt with everyone here as someone who was in that profession. I broke into Agile Coach. I was a consultant. I never really had the Scrum Master or Agile Coach title, but I did those roles and responsibilities unofficially, and that is the reason I was able to break into it. I just had to communicate it the right way using Agile terminology. Okay, so we are at the hour. Thank you. I expect and do edit the application, but no one has confirmed that we don't have to have an ugly resume. Yes, no more ugly resumes. Thank you very much. I hope that I have done the world and even recruiters a huge favor. And hopefully, you guys are all going to be encouraged to not, get into the pitfall of creating ugly resumes. Okay, so if you have further questions, if you ever want to jump through a virtual coffee with me, if you ever want to pick my brain, please do not hesitate to send me a DM. As a servant leader, I always love to create value for people. So please don't be a stranger. Follow me, connect with me, even better, because that means you'll get notifications of my free events. Go on my YouTube channel, subscribe, because there's a lot of good stuff in there. And you can also watch my Scrum Alliance presentation. If you go into my LinkedIn profile, you are actually going to see a link that says free resources. And when you click on that, you are going to find my Scrum Alliance presentation. You can also read my story on nadabuhendi.com. That is my website, where I talk about my experience of how I quit over my job. And tomorrow, I'm actually launching a podcast interview that I did, sharing my very vulnerable story. I am from the Middle East, and I immigrated to Canada. I went through a lot of hardships getting my first Canadian role, and so I talk about that in case someone is in that situation and wants to be inspired. All right, friends, I hope you have a wonderful night. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for being there. I truly appreciate it, and do not hesitate to connect.
It's the success.
Not only to think, but to act outside of the box.
You need a coach to help guide you on what your sweet spot is.
What you do works, period.